Well, thank you for inviting me out to speak this morning. I'm sure everyone's going to learn something new about neuromapping this morning. I hope you find it as fascinating as I do. In 2001, I had chronic low back pain, and I went through all the normal courses of medical treatment, and I was finally presented with the possibility of having my lumbar spine fused in order to get rid of back pain. And that was just scary enough for me to open up my mind to other possibilities, other ways of treatment that I would have previously discarded. I was living in San Diego at the time, lived down there for about 10 years, and a friend of mine recommended that I go see a gentleman up in Los Angeles. When I went up to see him, he took a look at my entire back to include the lumbar spine, and he said there's nothing wrong. Everything looks great, it's nice and healthy. However, your hip and your sacrum are not aligned, and that probably exhibits itself as low back pain. He gave me a series of movements to do right there in the office, and for the first time in 3 years, I was able to bend over without pain. And he gave me some follow-up exercise, and in just very short order, I no longer had the back pain at all. In 2006, I was deployed in Iraq. I came back in February 2007. I was told that there were 40,000 Marines in Southern California who had spent 3 or more deployments in Iraq. And because there were so many of us that had gone so many times, all 40,000 of us had to be moved out of Southern California, have our replacements come in so that they would have time to train the replacements in time for the next deployment. So for all of us, just having come back from Iraq, we had 6 weeks to sell our homes, to pack our stuff, and to move to a variety of places across the United States. I had no say in where I was going or what the timeline would be. And I was sent here to Fort Lewis. I didn't even know there were Marines in Fort Lewis. And there was only about 6 of them, so I guess I was pretty lucky. But this was a very stressful time for me. And when I got up here, I started having pain in my left knee. And it increased, constantly getting more and more challenging to the point that I couldn't walk up and down steps without having to lean on the rail. And I was about 38 at the time. I spent several years, my last 3 years in the military over here at Madigan with 3 physical therapists and 2 orthosurgeons. And they tried the full range of treatment, everything from very dynamic jumping things to finally telling me at the age of 40 that the best that I could hope for was to limit my walking to 100 steps at a time with no more than a 30-degree bend in my knee, which basically meant I could go check the mail and come back and sit on the couch. And I said, this can't be the answer. As soon as I retired and I was no longer subject to military medical care, I flew back to Los Angeles and I saw the same gentleman that helped me with my back. I flew down on a weekend, his office was closed, I met him at his home. And as soon as I came in the front door, he started laughing. And he said, "I thought you said it was your knee." And I said, "Well, that's what hurts." And he said, "That's not the problem." Similar to what he did with my hip, he took my left ankle, which no one had looked at the entire time, through a range of movements and exercises, and I was able to squat right there in his home without pain. Did the follow-up exercises, and the knee pain was gone. This completely changed the way that I looked at the body, the way that people interpret pain, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about this morning. What am I aiming at here? Okay. Neuromapping. Our cerebellum, the little thing that looks like a ball of twine at the base of our brain, it collects all these neurosignals from all over our body. And it creates a picture of what's happening both in and around our body. When that picture is very clear and we have a great idea of what's going on around us, then our stress on our nervous system is very low, and our quality of movement is very high. But if you look up here, can everyone see the baseball bat flying toward everyone's face? Okay. The cerebellum has an interesting function in that it has the ability to predict. And when it predicts that something is going to be dangerous to the body, it creates additional stress on the nervous system. That stress clouds our map, increases our stress, and makes us more susceptible to chronic pain. In this particular instance, the cerebellum became aware of the bat flying towards everyone. They didn't have to stop and think, should I put my arms up to protect my face? That was instinctive. The cerebellum predicted that there was danger and reacted accordingly. Everyone's arms are naturally in line between their head, which is their command center, and the oncoming threat. And it also has apparently a beer preservation mechanism. The gentleman up here in the white shirt is doing a pretty good job of protecting that $6 beer.
The Sunrise Rotarian right there.
However, when we don't have a very clear map and our brain becomes a little confused because it's not getting good input, our stress goes up and we can start to see some negative effects here. So, can I get a volunteer? Cameron, could you help me for just a moment? Could we face the audience, please, sir? We're going to hold hands. I'm going to, just go ahead and face everyone. I'm going to go ahead and put Cameron's shoulder in this position right here. I would like you to hold this up as long as possible, and I'm going to give you some pressure down, okay? So that's nice and solid, right? It looks pretty good. Go ahead and relax and let's see your thumb. If there's any pain, let me know. There should be some discomfort, but if there's any pain, let me know. Let's go ahead and put your arm back in position. Not as strong. Okay. Has anyone seen a demonstration like this before? Arthrokinetic reflex? Okay. Some thumb waves. Some circles. Let's go ahead and put it in place. Okay. So, have a seat, please. Okay. So, what happened is he started off with a very clear map. His stress was low, everything was fine, and he was very strong in that position. What I did is I went to the other side of his body, I took a single joint, I jammed it. That clouded his map just a little bit, and the second time that I did the demonstration, there was much less strength in his shoulder, okay? The longer we wait, the more his body would clarify that jammed joint and the strength would return. But in that immediate instance, when some clarity was missing, his strength went away a little bit. There's a very large manufacturing firm that we've all heard of that's here in the Pacific Northwest. And a few years ago, they were having issues with chronic back pain across their manufacturing departments. They went through all the normal courses of action that you would normally do to try to address these things. And they couldn't come up with anything. So they hired an outside organization to come in and do an analysis. And the one correlation that they could come up with was job satisfaction. People with high job satisfaction had no back pain. People with low job satisfaction had back pain. So they spent some time improving the job satisfaction of the affected people. And that, in and of itself, took care of the back pain. A few years ago in the New England Journal of Medicine, there was an article on Major League Baseball. It had a lot of baseball players who were having chronic knee pain. They would go in, MRI the knee, and they would find a torn meniscus, and that would be the only issue. They'd go in, try to repair the meniscus, but the pain would not go away. Interesting part of that study is that if we were to take the next 100 people that come down the sidewalk that do not have knee pain, over 60% of them will have a torn meniscus. So having physical damage didn't necessarily correlate to chronic pain. So what did? This is what we call the total stress threshold theory. That if there's enough stress on the nervous system, it makes us more susceptible to chronic pain, especially if we've had a past injury in that area. If I was to, let's say, take Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, when he was about 12 years old, he had an ankle injury. So that meant that he spent about 6 to 8 weeks walking around with an altered gait. He was limping a little bit. That did 1.8 to 2 million repetitions of bad movement. That's residual. That creates stress that stays with him for the rest of his life until it's corrected. Then maybe he was a baseball player in high school, and after games, his elbow would be sore. That has nothing to do with his pitching arm. It has everything to do with his shoulder alignment and his thoracic spine mobility. Mr. Smith puts on hard-soled shoes every day and goes to work, further limiting the sensory input that he should be getting from his feet. That creates additional stress. He sits in front of a computer every day. His back is arched, doesn't have good mobility in the thoracic spine. Again, he's reducing this input, creating stress. His eyes are confined to a screen. They're not out doing everything that our eyes are capable of doing. All this provides stress. But yet he can go to work every day and not have any chronic pain. And then a big project comes along. His department is running a little bit behind and he has a lot of stress. And now his back starts to kill him. And so this goes on for several days. Finally, he comes and sees me. Based on the total stress model, who thinks I could work on that ankle from his 12-year-old injury and make his back pain go away? Yeah, because Roseanne's seen it, so she knows. I could work on his eyes and the back pain go away. I could work on his thoracic spine mobility, his back pain would go away. I could just take him out of his shoes, put his feet through a series of movements that increase the sensation in his feet, and his back pain go away. So that could happen individually from any one of those things or in aggregate. So it's a very different approach to why we have chronic pain and how to address chronic pain. And this is one of the reasons that back pain and knee pain especially are so hard to diagnose. All of these elements were previously confined to different medical fields. Part of it is behavioral optometry, some of it is functional neurology, some of it is kinesiology. And in the past, different experts would look at it through the lens of just that one discipline. But now we're starting to get to the point that we can pull information from various fields and be able to provide one comprehensive product. Now, if he never had that big project at work, if he just went through life carrying all that residual stress, and he came and seen me anyway, his golf game would get better, his tennis game would get better, he would have better peripheral vision when he was driving on the interstate. All of these things happen when we clarify our map. I just gave you a few lists of some of the things that can affect your nervous system. Usually when I describe Mr. Smith, I have a few questions in the audience. Does anyone have a question this morning? Yes?
Wouldn't you often have people that come in that actually have an injury to an area?
Okay, do I have people come in with an injury to an area? Yes. As long as they're under medical care for that particular injury, I don't do anything with that injury itself. However, I can work the entire kinetic chain around that injury to prevent that injury from creating additional stress on the rest of the body. Does that answer your question? Yes. Anyone else have a question? Yes.
As a few of us get older, we seem to start having pain in different sections of our body. For instance, I've noticed I'm starting to get some neck pain. Don't ask me why, because my brain doesn't work too hard. But and then also maybe like foot pain. So I think these are arthritic type things, is what my doctor's saying. Is this something that you approach in your work?
We do. So even with arthritis, when we look at arthritis simply means inflammation of the joints. I have several vertebrae that were fractured from a rocket attack, so some of my neck vertebrae are fused right now, and I from time to time have the same a similar issue. Every one of our joints should be able to move both forward, back, left, and right. And then once we can do that, we should be able to make circles, and then we should be able to make figure eights. The more immobile a joint is, the more susceptible you are to pain in that joint. So if you came in, I can't say for sure that we would be able to alleviate the neck pain, but very often we can. And we do a specific series of neck drills that's actually more effective for dealing with chronic pain than medication. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you do a hands-on chiropractic kind of thing, or what is your actual
No.
technique?
So when we rely on an external source to correct our problems, we train our brain to rely on that external source. And I don't have anything against chiropractic or massage or anything like that. I think there's a place for all of it. However, what we do is we demonstrate to you, and we get immediate feedback. We test everything right there on the spot. We don't have to wait 6 weeks and see if it works. You're going to know right then whether each movement that we do is beneficial for you, neutral, or negative. We get constant feedback right then on the spot. We will teach you how to correct your own issues. And we give people what we call happy drills. I used to call them homework, but people didn't like that. So when we call them happy drills, they're much more likely to do them. That if they start to feel a pain or something, they may do something with their elbow, and then their back pain goes away, and it makes them happy. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, tendonitis tends to be kind of a slow healing kind of a thing. Frequently, are you able to help tendonitis?
Unfortunately, no. With tendonitis, it tends to be just staying off of the affected tendon and giving it a chance to kind of rest. However, we do other things to other parts of the body to help alleviate stress on that area, but for the tendonitis itself, what we do doesn't have a big effect on tendonitis. Yes?
How did you learn all of this?
How did I learn all this? Okay, Dr. Eric Cobb, he's a gentleman who was born with a severe curvature of his back. He went through the typical medical professions, and didn't work for him. He then became a chiropractor. That didn't work for him. He started studying a lot of different functional neurology studies from around the world. And he started to pull this, this way of looking at pain together into a comprehensive package. It is an ongoing, constantly developing field. We go back for training at least once a year, but we do it about every 6 months. Essentially, we'll go down, we'll get about 5 days worth of training, and then we come back and we put it into effect with our clients until we really have down that portion of the training, and then we go back and we get some more. And it just really develops around what sort of issues that we're seeing that we can't address, and they'll work on how to further correct that. Any other questions? Well, thank you for your time this morning. And there are some materials on the table if you'd like to get in touch with us about anything, whether it's the fitness, the nutrition, or the chronic pain management, anything to do with neural mapping. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you very much for having us.